Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. We are getting a new look this week at just how weak of a strongman Donald Trump is becoming, how he's winning ever greater control over an ever shrinking political faction. It's a strange, toxic dynamic we've seen play out in autocratic regimes and cults through history. And now we're seeing it happen to what remains of the Republican Party. We saw it, of course, in Texas last night, where reliably conservative Senator John Cornyn, a right-wing dude, someone who has almost always voted with Trump, didn't just lose his Republican primary. He got absolutely walloped, curb-stomped by Trump's candidate, Ken Paxton, the far-right, scandal-ridden state attorney general, whose own party impeached him in 2023 for gross corruption. It was, as the Times put it, a rout, with Paxton unseating Cornyn by more than 25 points. Wasn't even close. It was so not close that the prevailing media narrative is that Donald Trump's power is only growing within the Republican Party. After all, this is just the biggest in a string of primary victories for Trump-approved candidates this month. His slate of MAGA challengers unseated 6 Republican Indiana state senators who had the temerity to oppose Trump on gerrymandering. Remember that? That was a few weeks ago. Then next in his crosshairs, Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy, who voted for Trump's conviction after his impeachment on January 6th. He lost his primary, too. Then it was Thomas Massie, one of the most conservative members of the House, who angered Trump by helping to force the release of the Epstein files and oppose the war in Iran. He lost to a Trump-endorsed challenger last week, and now Trump has unhorsed one of his party's most senior senators, John Cornyn, a man who tried so hard to stay in the president's good graces, from eating at a Trump burger joint to posting a photo of himself reading Art of the Deal. Shame that didn't work, right? Wasn't enough. It wasn't enough because the president told Republicans to vote for Paxton, one of the most notoriously unethical public figures in all of American policy today. I can't even use the words that Republicans in Texas used to describe Ken Paxton here on this family program. The first thing the Republican Party's Senate elections arm had to do after Ken Paxton won that race was to immediately attempt to delete months of press releases blasting Paxton is corrupt. Again, this is the Senate Republican committee, right? But Paxton has never crossed Trump, and more than ever, Donald Trump is the Republican Party.
Last night was incredible. Not only Texas, but so many other places, and the numbers were fantastic. And they've really been that way for a year. If you look, they thought they were going to outweight me. We'll outweight him. He's got the midterms. I don't care about the midterms. Look what happened last night. That was the prelude to the midterms.
I think the best way to understand all of this, the way Trump's relationship with the Republican Party and even his relationship to the media in some cases and the entire political institutions of the country, is just like a toxic relationship, sometimes an abusive relationship. And as with any deeply dysfunctional toxic relationship, one of the weird things about that is the closer you are to it, the harder it is to see the reality clearly, right? The people in it don't quite see what's going on as well as the people who are outside of it. The reality is that while Trump can dictate terms in Republican primaries, he's pulling the party farther and farther away from what the vast majority of Americans want. Here's an example of this dynamic, and I want you to look at this because I think it's one of the most revealing bits of data to come out of last night. So look at Starr County, Texas. It's right there. It sits on the border with Mexico. It's actually the county in the U.S. with the highest proportion of Hispanic residents in the entire country, according to the 2020 census. Now, Starr County famously flipped to Donald Trump in the last election after more than a century of voting Democratic. It was a huge deal. Donald Trump won Starr County by 15 points. And it was widely, and I think correctly, seen as evidence of Trump's strength with Hispanic voters in that 2024 election. So if you look just at the percentages of last night's Senate runoff in Starr County for the Republican nomination, you'd say Donald Trump is still dominating, right? This is Starr County. His candidate beat Cornyn there by nearly 50 percentage points. But what's that percentage based on? How many Republicans actually turned out to vote in this runoff? Well, virtually none. 90 votes in all. That's not a typo. That's not a mistake. 90 out of 36,000 registered voters in Starr County. In a county where Donald Trump won 9,500 votes just 2 years ago. In fact, in that same county, Starr County, in a single Democratic primary for a local judge back in March, more than 13,000 Democrats turned out to vote. If you're doing the math in your head, that's a lot more than 90. Those numbers are why Democrats are feeling, well, let's say relatively optimistic about this being a real race, about the possibility of flipping that Texas Senate seat, possibly the Senate itself. Here's the map of Senate races this November. Democrats need to hold all their seats and flip 4 red seats to take the chamber. And honestly, that looked nearly impossible 6 months ago, a year ago, before Trump endorsed Paxton, the atrociously fraught candidate Democrats hoped they would get. It's just clear every day that Trump's strategy for power now is a kind of, we might call a vanguardist strategy, right? Tighter and tighter hold on fewer and fewer people, like some influential, powerful, perhaps, as we've seen with the folks in Jan 6, the folks that he may want to give public money to, like violent folks, right? But that's a strategy, right? Total control, a small group of people. You see it in the polls, where Trump is plunging to new lows. Just hit a new low in the YouGov poll today, if I'm not mistaken. And you see it as Democrats widen their lead on the generic congressional ballot. You also see it in the increasing, I mean, almost impossible to watch, like physically repellent sycophancy of the Republicans that have so far survived Trump's whims, as demonstrated by the coterie of kiss-ups that dominated today's cabinet meeting.
First of all, thank you for your leadership, sir, for making it possible.
Mr. President, you have made us a nation of builders again. You're leading us to the greatest economy that the world has ever known.
Absolutely, sir. I think actually your efforts on the reflecting pool are actually a great segue.
You turned Venezuela from a sanctioned adversary into a strategic ally in 45 minutes. Never happened in history before.
The economy that you were building is not only strong, but secure and resilient.
All that flowing to our Gulf Coast refineries is also helping to keep the price of gas down at home.
I just want to note one more thing to give you a sense of how committed this president is.
I hear it everywhere I go. Please thank the president for putting us back on track. They thank you. They love you.
So, sir, just to reiterate, resilience and prosperity have been the marks of your second term.
I mean, I gotta say, I don't go in for really like old school constraining, I think sometimes awful gender conceptions. But if I did, I think about like my grandfather, who's sort of, from a different time. Like, it's unmanly. I'm sorry. What are you doing? The level of bootlicking helps the rest of us see plain as day what's staring us in the face. People are abandoning MAGA and the Republican Party. They're distancing themselves from Trump. As they leave and his base of support shrinks, the concentration of primary voting diehards and cabinet-level dead-enders in Trump's party only increases. This is almost like an accounting identity, right? You've got a group of people, and the people were like, I'm not so into this, leave. Who's left? Who's left? They're the people showing up to vote in Starr County, all 90 of them. They're the people sitting at the cabinet meetings. That's who's running things right now. This dwindling, smaller, concentrated group of people. It's the defining political dynamic right now in the country. One that can really only be broken through mass mobilization and democratic elections, which is why threats to upend democracy will only grow more intense as Trump's faction of MAGA diehards keep shrinking.